Hello, we're Nicholas, Ryan, Vance, and myself, Rob, and together we're Team InnSure. In wildfire-prone areas like California, the threat to our communities is more than just a possibility, it's a lived reality. Developing effective insurance solutions is essential to helping affected residents recover and rebuild, ultimately strengthening our resilience and community. For this project, we drafted an initial problem statement. Communities at high risk of wildfires need affordable, accessible solutions to mitigate the devastating impact of catastrophic wildfire events.
For us to understand and define our problem space, we started with a mission model canvas, otherwise known as our MMC. And this is where we began our journey. We created the MMC as an exercise to help us identify our beneficiaries and determine the next steps in our project. We redesigned the MMC multiple times throughout our journey, and we simplified it down to this version that you're seeing now.
So the MMC helped us identify our beneficiaries, and from those beneficiaries, we developed a value proposition canvas, a VPC for each of our four identified beneficiaries. And this slide is just an example of the exercise that we did. Wanted to highlight the pains and gains that we identify for the beneficiary. In this case, we're looking at the insurance industry, but we ran this exercise for each of our four beneficiaries, and we'll talk about the details and our insights in the upcoming slides.
So with our VPCs, we've identified four main groups: the homeowners, regulators, and the government, the insurance industry or companies, and the wildfire tech and builders. For this slide, basically for this whole ecosystem of the wildfire insurance industry, these are all the jobs that each party is partially or fully responsible for to partake in this ecosystem. So for homeowners, their main responsibility is to protect property from wildfire damage, such as cleaning vegetation, participating in proactive risk management, and replacing things like roofs or windows to become more wildfire resilient. Regulators and government are responsible for developing and enforcing policies and regulations for land use, building codes, and ensuring the public safety of buildings. And they also regulate the insurance markets. For the wildfire industry and companies, they develop and quantify wildfire risks and develop risk models so they can quantify the risk and set like a premium or a like a price on how risky it is to insure a house, for instance. For the wildfire tech and builders, they research new fire technologies, like developing new materials to become more resilient, and they ensure new construction is built with the best practices in mind. For pains, because of climate change, the wildfire risk is more uncertain and with the frequency and severity of wildfires. So homeowners may experience high premiums. They can have difficulty obtaining coverage because of the uncertainty of wildfire risk, and they can run into the fear of financial ruin or displacement due to wildfires because many homes can be destroyed by these wildfires. For the regulators and government, they have to balance competing priorities of economic development, safety, and consumer cost. They have to make sure that insurance is affordable, but they also have to make sure that the companies are not maximizing profit over safety. For the insurance industry, because of the wildfire risk is largely unidentified and it's always a changing market. Current tools won't always be able to accurately quantify risk. So, and these companies have to continuously develop new algorithms to make sure that future predictions are as accurate as they can. For wildfire tech and builders, builders do face a risk of building in wildfire prone areas, and the application of the models that track wildfire risk data always needs more data because the longer the historical data is, the less accurate it might be. And for the gains section, homeowners can lower the costs from risk mitigation if they partake in proactive risk management that can actually increase the value of their properties. For regular They want to increase public awareness and trust, and they can experience reduced wildfire losses if communities partake in proactive wildfire risk management. And for the insurance industry is that they can have a better, more accurate risk assessment, and they can have more sensible pricing for policies based on better quantified risk. For wildfire tech and builders, they will have many opportunities to participate in the emerging industry, and they can face less risk with assurance of insurance coverage.
And so after completing this exercise for each of our beneficiaries, it helped us zero in on what our minimum viable product would be, our MVP. And this is based on insights we gained through both research and interviews that we had conducted. So to give a highlight of the things that we did, over the course of 7 weeks, we interviewed 24 different individuals. These individuals included fire protection engineers, facility managers, a federal fire chief, a wildfire insurance founder, and a management solution CEO, among other individuals.
So, some highlights from our interviews, because insurance companies are they usually are adapted to the current climate and market conditions. But what's really important is that we can look at what insurance might look like 20, 30, or 40 years from now. Things like parametric insurance can be served as a possible immediate solution for wildfire insurance. It's essentially a threshold meter where, for instance, in flooding insurance, if you have flooding parametric insurance, if you get like 12 inches of flooding, then you get a payout. Things like for wildfires, it might be a bit difficult to quantify like how much damage a wildfire can affect for a property. So quantifying wildfire losses might be dependent on each insurance company for payouts. Forward modeling or catastrophic modeling is used to predict future losses and develop more accurate risk assessments via computer simulations. That could also be a possible viable solution that I believe currently a lot of insurance companies are looking into. And finally, communities often have a short-lived memory. Um, so things like some counties can have regulations for more resilient infrastructure, and a few years later they can repeal it because the forward costs of implementing these pro-environmental infrastructure can have a higher upfront cost. And then, for instance, they can have a hurricane or another wildfire, and it can do more damage than if they didn't repeal that environmental policy in the first place.
And here are just some key takeaways from the interviews that we've done. So, in an interview with Mr. Ken O, who is a fire protection engineer, there's one of the points he wanted to emphasize that public education is key. Homeowners need to understand that wildfire resilience isn't just about firefighters. It starts with protective measures taken before the fire even starts. And this is another key insight in this case provided by a facilities operations specialist. And his insight was, that homeowners and businesses need to understand their policies and ensure that they have adequate coverage for wildfire.
So after conducting all these interviews and research, we determined that we needed to pivot from our problem statement. Basically, after hours synthesizing all this data, we determined that our new problem statement would be: who are the key personnel required to have a meaningful discussion about wildfire insurance, and how are they connected?
And so from these insights, we, address our new problem statement, the solution that we found and what we decided to be our minimum viable product would be a market map of the wildfire insurance industry. And this is that map of the wildfire insurance industry, the market map. And what it's trying to capture is all the critical parties that need to be in place to have a meaningful discussion. Ideally, this would serve as like a template for those who are trying to actively quantify the risks. So some of the major players and major stakeholders would include insurance industry representatives, land builders, land developers, government agencies, communities, which includes homeowners, property investors, and homeowner associations, and additional nonprofits, of which InnSure is a part, and bringing all these separate groups together to try to have a discussion. Obviously, they'll all have different priorities and different agendas, but having them in a group to discuss what makes sense and finding a compromise among different priorities.
So over the past 8 weeks, we've come to a much deeper understanding of very complex wildfire insurance market. And we've also spent and learned a lot about basically wildfire mitigation efforts at both a individual and community level, and how that can help basically provide resiliency and recovery from potential wildfire losses. And we'd like to say a very special thank you to everybody that's helped us in this journey so far, basically from Charlie Sadati at InnSure to all the helpful and very insightful people we've interviewed, and to our team at CSU, MD, Professor Sue, and Brianna. Thank you all very much. I don't think we could have gotten through any of this without you guys. Thank you all, and thanks for tuning into our presentation.